Sarah also teed up that you guys recently, just yesterday, had quite a gangbusters earnings report. I think stock went up over 10%, double digits. Hard topic to talk about when you guys are doing so well, but just I'm curious, what do you attribute that success to for you guys at CrowdStrike and across the industry? Do you think that is going to foretell more growth, more success, especially sort of as people continue to think about AI investments in cybersecurity?
Sure. So, as many have discussed, and I'm sure many know in here, it's still a challenging environment out afield. What we've seen, though, is that customers are really focused on stopping breaches, right? And the technologies and companies that can help. And I think that's one of the areas when I started the company, and that's our we don't have a mission statement, we have a mission, stop the breach. And I think we've been able to do that for many customers. Many are in the audience. I saw them on the roster here, so we appreciate that. But there's been a lot of talk around the platform play and the platform wars, and it's something that I really focused on when I got the company going in 2011. But if we can add more value, more capabilities to a customer's environment, we can consolidate other technologies they have, help them save money, give them a better experience with a single platform and a single agent. Ultimately, we're going to give them a better outcome, which is stopping the breach. And that's been a big part of it, whether that's our endpoint protection technology or now next-gen SIEM, identity protection, our cloud suite of technologies. It all comes together with one mission, stopping breaches. So I think that's resonated in the field. It's been certainly challenging for lots of folks, but I think if you have the right people and the right technologies and you take care of the customers, good things happen.
You mentioned adding value for customers. Just when you sort of look at the next 6 months or so, complicated threat environment out there. We have an election coming up. Ransomware continues to be a huge problem. Just what are the strategic priorities for CrowdStrike as you sort of look at the back half of this year and into the next year?
As a company or from an industry perspective?
As a company or as broader industry, like what do you think the priorities should be?
Well, as a company, we're always focused on being on the leading edge of protecting new technologies. And I've talked about this for a while, in that security is a complicated space. If you think about security, there isn't just one behemoth that does everything, right? And if you go to RSA, you've got 5,000 plus companies that are out there, because the technology curve has almost gone up exponentially. And you need security that parallels the technology curve. I remember when I got into security 30 plus years ago, it was barely firewalls, and it was a website and kind of a Cisco router. You're blocking low number of ports. It was kind of funny. And now think about all the complexity with AI and cloud environments, right? So as the technology curve increases its slope, you need security that parallels that. Not any one company can do that. Obviously, we handle our area and we focus on it, but there's many other companies that a CISO needs to be able to protect their environment. So I think that's a big part of it. So as AI emerges in terms of an attack vector, as people think about how they use AI, and we're still in the formative stages for many companies, like they've got ChatGPT, they're trying to figure it out, they're worried about putting data into it, and what does it all mean? But ultimately, as this evolves, it's going to be a similar process to the CI/CD pipeline. You're going to have your AI pipeline, everything from gathering the data, curating the data, creating the training models, and then moving into inference and everything in between. So you're going to need guardrails across all of those.
On AI, clearly that's a huge game changer, not just for the industry, but technology writ large. There's been so much focus on sort of the perils of AI in the cybersecurity landscape of being able to write malware. We've seen it used sort of crudely in the disinformation space, but it's clearly also can be very useful in the defense space. So do you see AI as more of a threat to cybersecurity or more of an opportunity, or is it sort of a net zero? Like, how do you sort of think about dealing with those next-gen AI threats versus sort of the opportunities and the ability to help protect customers?
Well, it's a foundational element that I started CrowdStrike with as an AI native company. And at the time, it was machine learning and being able to use that to detect these sort of attacks without ever seeing before. Obviously, in the later years, you've got generative AI, which came out well past when I started CrowdStrike. But I think it's a real boon for security practitioners. And I tell you why, because part of security and what we need to do is to really what I call bend time. And in security, every company here is going to have some level of incident, right? What you want to do is make sure that incident doesn't turn into a breach. And any big company is going to have that. And if you can bend time, that's going to help you deal with that incident and make sure that it doesn't grow into something much bigger. As an example, our breakout times in which we track at Software website have come down dramatically. Now it's 62 minutes, meaning that if an attacker gets onto a system, like some we're going to talk about here in a minute, it on average takes 62 minutes before they can move laterally somewhere else. We've seen this as low as 2 minutes and 7 seconds, right? And so if you can bend time and you can get in front of this, you have a much greater probability of stopping the adversary. That's one piece. The second piece then is, well, what does it mean for the adversary? What does AI mean? Well, the defenders are going to be able to use it to help bend time and make their job easier, but so is the adversary. And what I think we're seeing is this democratization of skill sets that can be brought to the masses. In the grand scheme of things, there's 8 billion plus people in the world. In the grand scheme of things, there's a relative handful of people that are really have the know-how to create, these sort of exploits and malware and disassemble things, right? There's a lot of them, but in the grand scheme of 8 billion, it's not much. Right. So what you're going to see is many more threat actors emerge. You're going to see a proliferation of that because it's so easy. You just bring that all that knowledge comes from the pyramid. If you think about a pyramid of the best at the top, it all comes down, and you're going to have many more new adversaries and crime actors in that middle band.
I want to talk about threat actors more in a minute, but just on AI and the business implications of that, there's concerns about the AI industry and sort of where it's going to top out. Do you have concerns that there could be some sort of AI bubble in the cybersecurity industry that could sort of, that is fueling a lot of the growth you're seeing currently, and that could come crashing down at some point when, maybe AI defense systems aren't as robust as maybe people want them to be?
I don't see an AI bubble. I think in some cases, the LLMs will be commoditized, and then how you actually create value around those, right? A lot of them started as massive, large language models. And what we're seeing is that you can create smaller ones that give pretty good efficacy, but are much more cost effective and are bespoke to the application that you're building it for. So I think there's going to be a lot of innovation around leveraging AI and how you actually use it and what you use and how you create it and how you train it and those sort of things. So I don't see it as a bubble in cybersecurity. I think we're really in the early innings when we show customers that you can take 8 hours of grunt work in a security operations center and do it in 10 minutes, when you could write a situational report, in 10 seconds because you're a prompt engineer, and Charlotte can put all this information together and basically give you a whole situational report of an incident. Like, that's incredible. So I think it's only going to fuel cybersecurity in terms of allowing people to move faster and get better outcomes. And maybe there's bubbles in other areas of AI, but I think cybersecurity is not one of them.
I want to turn to a topic that I don't think you've been too shy about, which is Microsoft. They are a large security product vendor, huge in the space. Recently, there was the US government report, the Cyber Safety Review Board came out and knocked them pretty aggressively for a government document saying they had inadequate security culture because of the way that they handled a Chinese hack on State Department and Commerce Department officials tracing back to last summer, or was identified last summer. Really remarkable to see that, and since then, Microsoft has said they're overhauling their security, sort of prioritizing that as like top of mind. But CrowdStrike and others have sort of taken that as an opportunity to point out that there are other security opportunities out there as well. And I just wanted to ask you, what did you make of that report? How significant was it to see a government sort of pretty sharply criticize security practices at one of your competitors, and has that been an opportunity for you guys?
Well, I thought it was a very fair and well-written report. And as you said, it didn't really pull any punches. And I think that was the beauty of the report. It basically stated the facts. There were a lot of people that worked on that report, and I think they did a fantastic job. of laying out the facts of just the crisis in confidence in Microsoft and what they're doing, and sort of the culture of putting dollars first and licensing first above security. Even if you look at the latest recall feature, which is now a buzz, as you take screenshots and store it in a SQLite database, that may not be the best thing in the world, right? So you have to look at, words are words and actions are different, and you have to look at the actions versus the words. So we'll see what happens there. But if anyone hasn't read the report, you should go out and read it. It's off the CISA website, and whether it's the culture they talked about, or just even some of the areas in terms of being forthright in their blog and the timing around it, and just the transparency. There was a lack of, I think, transparency and quite honestly being forthright about what happened. And it's all laid out factually in the report. So report should stand on its own, but obviously there's some challenges that they're going to need to overcome.
Just on the recall product, some security researchers have said that's kind of a huge threat surface for customers who use that. That's a concern you share? I mean, should Microsoft consider recalling the recall?
Well, if you have a bunch of sensitive information and you store it in a SQLite database that's on the system, I can tell you the first place where somebody's going to go if they get on it is they're going to start looking for that information. So, look, I can understand features and making it easier for people, and they want to progress their operating system, but it has to be done in a secure way. But I think it's indicative of the lack of security culture within the organization when you put out features like this. And we've seen this time and time again, whether it's some of the challenges, the architectural decisions that were made around Active Directory way back when, we're still living with. Do you think Microsoft just popped into being a major cloud provider and just rebuilt everything, or do you think they took what they had and retooled it for the cloud, right? So a lot of the challenges, and I talked about this in the Senate hearing, a lot of the architectural challenges that you've seen, has been moved into the cloud. Why is it that operating system is so easy to just pluck encrypted passwords out and reuse those, right? When you look at other operating systems, they're just built differently. It's much harder to do that the way they create these passwords and the way the directories are maintained. So anyway, I don't want to get too far afield, but a lot of these challenges have started, with decisions 25 years ago. They haven't gotten any better today.
There's been a lot of concern about anti-competitive behavior in the technology industry, not specifically so much cybersecurity, but I want to pose a question to you. With Microsoft or other large technology companies, are you concerned about the possibility of anti-competitive practices in the cybersecurity field?
I think you have to look at that. I mean, there's been plenty of customers who have come up to me and basically said, they're in the middle of an E5 license and they just think that the practices are predatory from Microsoft, and they're too scared to speak up about it. In their own organizations and certainly externally. So I think when you have that level of sort of fear of saying something, and when customers using the term predatory, and it's cause for concern. And I think security is one of those areas where, yes, it's a business, right? All the companies and vendors are trying to make a profit on it. We got that, right? But we're also trying to help customers. And if you're putting all of the interests, ahead of the customers, I think that's really where you run afoul. So it's a balancing act of doing the right thing for a customer and keeping organizations and governments safe, and also making it a viable business.
Microsoft, of course, would say they do put the customer first when it comes to security, and that they're structured in a way that mitigates any anti-competitive concerns, but I appreciate your remarks. Let's move on to some threats. There's an election. There's a lot of elections around the globe this year, and we've seen some actors in other spaces already. But as we sort of think about November, there's most likely going to be a very sleepy, not very tense election that we're going to have here in the U.S.
You use that term, sleepy.
Yeah, well, I meant nothing by that. But
Okay.
I think certainly we're going to have a lot of companionship and camaraderie on both sides coming together. Not going to be very tense. But amid that environment, sort of how are you and how is CrowdStrike thinking about election security, which can mean so many things. Of course, it can mean attacks on the infrastructure itself of voting systems. It can mean disinformation. It can mean hack and leak. How are you thinking about sort of what Russia might be up to, what China might be up to, and sort of this election in 2024, helping to identify what's going on and reassure the American voter that it's going to be a secure election?
Sure. So if you think about 2024 versus, say, 2016, I think there's a lot of expertise that has been gained by the likes of Russia and China, Iran, others. And the technology environment has dramatically changed. The deep fake technology today is so good. I think that's one of the areas that you really worry about. I mean, 2016, we used to track this, and you would see people actually have conversations with just bots, and that was in 2016, and they're literally arguing, or they're promoting their cause, and they're having an interactive conversation, and it's like there's nobody even behind the thing. So I think it's pretty easy for people to get wrapped up into that's real, or there's a narrative that we want to get behind. But a lot of it is, can be driven and has been driven by other nation states. And what we've seen in the past, we spent a lot of time researching this with our CrowdStrike intelligence team, is it's a little bit like a pebble in a pond. Like you'll take a topic, or you'll hear a topic, right? Anything related to geopolitical environment, and the pebble gets dropped in the pond, and then all these waves ripple out, and it's this amplification that takes place, right, through the whole social network. And if now in 2024, with the ability to create deep fakes, and some of our internal guys have made some funny spoof videos with me in it, just to show me how scary it is. And it's like, okay, like that looks and sounds exactly like me. You could not tell that it was not me in the video. So I think that's one of the areas that I really get concerned about. There's always concern about infrastructure and those sort of things. I think those areas, a lot of it is still paper voting and the like, some of it isn't, but I think it's how you create the false narrative to get people to do things that a nation state wants them to do. That's the area that really concerns me.
Would you be willing to share some of those deepfake files?
I probably wouldn't.
I think we'd love to have them up on screen if possible.
I'm gonna put that in the shredder.
Does CrowdStrike famously sort of came in and investigated in the DNC breach in 2016, identified Russia, actually 2 Russian actors as being infiltrating their systems. Russia's always sort of top of mind for election threats. Do you personally, or does CrowdStrike sort of see them still as sort of the top threat to be active in the election, or is it sort of, it's too hard to say, too early to say at this point?
I think it's too hard and too early. Certainly if you look at, Russia, China, like I said, Iran, there's robust capabilities in those areas, and each of these groups have their own methods and techniques and motivations in what they're looking for. So we'll see how it unfolds. I think there's going to be a lot of research and a lot of eyes on it, trying to understand what's happening. And my hope, and I know the social media platforms have put some effort into trying to identify these sort of things and deal with it, but it's a little bit of whack-a-mole. Like they come up and there's only so many things they can do. But I think a big part would be, and there's some technologies that they have already to try to identify these AI-generated this content, whether it's voice content. You've seen some of the phone calls and videos to sway voters. So hopefully there's better prevention technology in place around that.
Just maybe one more question, and then if there's any audience questions, we'll go to you guys, and you can just raise your hand and Mike will come. Volt Typhoon, or I believe you guys call them Vanguard Panda, yes. But the US government has sort of adopted the Volt Typhoon moniker. Chinese threat actor that's seemingly getting in all sorts of US critical infrastructure, not for espionage purposes, but to pre-position, as government officials have said, for a potential disruptive attack or attacks on our infrastructure, perhaps ahead of a conflict over Taiwan.
Yes.
This is very serious. I feel like the level of rhetoric I'm hearing from these officials is sort of, in some ways, unprecedented about a cyber threat. Just, you guys have tracked this threat actor. What can you tell us about how serious this is? What are your concerns? And are we doing enough to sort of respond to this Chinese APT threat?
Well, the threat actor is very capable, and the threat is real, and it should be taken seriously. If you look at the critical infrastructures they targeted, whether it's power, water, wind, et cetera, it goes, shipping, et cetera, it goes across the board. It's something you have to really be concerned about. And I think the U.S. government is right to be concerned about. And what we've seen is really what's called operational preparation of the environment, OPE. And that is the staging of capabilities in these OT environments. Obviously, the thought is if there is some level of outbreak in Taiwan, with Taiwan and China, that some of these capabilities could be activated, which would greatly impact the response of the U.S. government. So you have to be concerned about it. It's real. We've been involved. We've tracked and seen these threat actors and helped some of the organizations respond to it. So at this point, I think the government has done a decent job of raising the flag, and it's something that we have to be concerned with. But it's different. China spent a lot of time stealing data and copying it.
Right.
This is not stealing data. This is preparing the environment to activate it at some point in the future.
All right, are there any questions in the audience? Right here in the front. Front row in the middle.
You can probably hear me.
Yeah.
Just get the mic for recording purposes.
So
And
I
if you
could
could
use
say
my
your name.
Marine voice.
If you could just identify yourself as well, that'd be great.
There's a global battle going on around chips. And right now, China has more plants under construction than anyone else in the world, and they're investing significantly more than the U.S. in chip production. What do we need to do to stay ahead of the race and continue to lead in that area besides, sanctions? How do we stay ahead?
I think it comes down to dollars and cents, and I'm not an expert, and I really won't comment one way or another on the CHIPS Act, but I think there's been some recognition that we have to have more of these capabilities in the U.S. But when you look at how long it takes to get a manufacturing facility set up, and just kind of the approvals, the regulations, the cost, I mean, it's a slog here as opposed to in some other place like China. It's much easier to throw things up. They're not dealing with all the environmental impacts and agencies and studies and and protests where these manufacturing facilities come up. So I think some of it is a bit of our own doing, but at the end of the day, how do we make it more cost effective to be able to get these manufacturing plants built here in the U.S. and you're seeing some of them. You're seeing some of them in Arizona, right? Some big manufacturing facilities, but it takes time, and I think there's always a lag in terms of what chips are being made. We saw with COVID, like the smallest little chips that nobody wanted to make were the ones that was impacting everybody. Couldn't get a car, couldn't get a key because the little chip that goes in the key was made, in China or somewhere else, and it was impacting the supply chain. So whenever you have to ask the question, how, it's just follow the dollars, and how do you make it effective for businesses to do something here.